Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Lincoln Lawyer, Season 1, Episode 4. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So immediately picking up in the aftermath of the last episode, I love the con that Griggs played on. Like, I knew something was up with Griggs. I was like, just something about that dude don't sit right with me. Didn't expect that, because I felt like the guy that, like, the fact is the way he approached Mickey last episode, he didn't have a gun drawn or anything, so like there's something else there. He seemed like he legitimately was trying to talk to you, but the way Griggs talks about it is like, oh no, he was there legitimately to scare you. But I guess it makes sense too when Griggs was like, damn it, what are you doing for gun? Because I guess that's why Griggs felt comfortable doing what he's doing, because I guess as an officer he probably was able to look into Mickey and find out if Mickey had a registered gun on him, which he didn't, because the gun's actually Cisco's. So, obviously, that could have gone super sideways. Mickey could have shot the guy you sit to intimidate him. So, that could have gone... It's like, wow, the fact is Griggs is willing to go that far. Because he still kept believing, like, Mickey wasn't telling him the truth. But... Because at first, the way Mickey was setting it up to be like, oh, Cisco called his contact in the LAPD, and that person must have asked you, and Griggs is like, oh yeah, now I know that person's an insider. He's like, that was actually just a lucky bonus. The true motive was to find out whether or not you're lying to me, but now I know, hey, I can trust you. But it's like, right, we're in this together, so you want to find out what happened to Jerry just as much as I did, so we need to kind of work in this together. In fact, he even suggests, hey, this time I'm actually going to use you as bait for real. So, Mickey agrees to it, and that's a whole complication. But then, because they make a whole public announcement saying like, hey, we have everything that's on Jerry's computer, like, I've got a backup on it. Like, just making it a casual thing of being like, yeah, I'm prepared for court when he's talking to reporters. But obviously, we know it's like, okay, that's all undone because your car is bugged. So they're listening to the conversations where you're admitting, oh, all that is BS, you know? So, because Griggs does bring up the fact is that Jerry had some ties to the FBI. Like, apparently the FBI were calling him, so whether he was an informant, whether he was getting investigated, or whether it's just kind of like a pile of his words for the FBI, we have no idea. Griggs doesn't know, and neither does Mickey, so... But it's sad, because that plan of theirs could have worked if they had kept it low-key inside the Lincoln as well. But to be fair, Mickey didn't know it was bugged at the time, so why would he keep it low-key about like what they had planned and such? But the way Bruce said it, I thought that was interesting when he gets called up and he's like, well, he calls up Mickey and he's like, right, we both know there was nothing like that in Jerry's files. We know you're BSing. And so he's going to... Obviously, he's not running because he killed Jerry, but it's like, right, you know something, so why are you running? Can't talk about it on the phone. So the way he's a little fidgety later on, I'm like, is it cops? Because he talked when him and Mickey had that set up later for like, hey, let's meet up, which I love him, you know, having a cramp in the back seat, hiding so they could get around the protection that they have on Mickey. So he moves on from there to like him and Cisco in Lorna's car, and like Cisco looks like just like a giant in that car. He's just like, what? I had to borrow Lorna's car. Get in. And just like, oh boy. He just talked about getting out of Izzy's car and having to deal with like the chiropractor stuff. Like, oh, I need to go see a chiropractor after this. Like, even more so afterwards. But Carlin immediately knew something was fishy. Like something went wrong. It's like, right. They showed up. So once again, I feel like we might be dealing with cops, but maybe not. Or maybe even the feds. I don't know. Whoever, I don't know if it necessarily has anything to do with the person that has him tapped. Because the fact is that Bruce got a little twitchy around the cops. Understandably so, because even I was starting to get suspicious. I'm like, he keeps running into those same cops. He ran into those cops at the store, and then when he was about to be at his place and there was like a domestic thing nearby, it was those same two cops. I was like, that's obviously going to make you feel a certain way. And then later on, when he stopped, it's the same cops again. I mean, this is their jurisdiction. And I guess it is just unfortunate set of events made him paranoid. So that's why I'm getting the feeling like whoever it is must be a cop or something, or it must be a group of cops for him to get that little itchy, or whoever it is must have powerful, like, connections, and might not be a cop, may oversee the cops or something, or have a connection to the cops for him to get nervous like that. you know, because I was actually worried. I'm like, the entire time, I'm like, are you about to pull your gun on some cops or something? Because he was a little fidgety. I didn't like it. To be fair, they had the guns trained on him, so he didn't know if like, oh, you trying to take me out because I know too much or what. I was about to say, man, I was like, this sucks. Mickey needs him. This situation's escalating big time. Luckily, he was able to contact Griggs. Griggs got in contact with those cops, but things still went sideways because he ends up getting hit by the same lady he ran into. Well, he like walked past her at the store earlier. She was so busy texting, so I think the same thing happened here. She was texting and driving. I'm like, quite unfortunate. I was like, you know, because at first I was a little nervous. I was like, oh, is that lady just gonna walk by him, like, hit him with a syringe and poison him or something? It's like, no, it didn't happen. I was like, there's some part of me that's like, could she be like a lookout and she's texting to people that's like, oh, you need to take care of them? And then she just happens to be, is it just all happenstance? I don't know. Because it might also play into the fact is that when what's it, Bill? I'm already forgetting his name. When home dude walked past her, he kind of gave her that look because once again he was just on edge. He was just not sure. I don't think he's sleeping well. He's just waiting for the boogeyman around every corner. So, but like I said, just ended up getting hit by the car. I guess he died. There was a lot of blood. I guess it's just kind of like, well, that went up in smoke. Whatever he knew died with him. So that super sucks. Especially after, like, Lorna went to the whole trouble of tracking him down. I thought it was pretty smart, too, how she found out that, right, he's using a fake ID. Well, most likely he's using the fake ID belonging to maybe a dead client of Jerry's. And this is the only one that didn't have a death certificate. So it's like, man, they had it all figured out. They chased him down, like Cisco was keeping an eye on him. It was like, oh, the situation de-escalated. It wasn't that bad. He takes a few steps back, gets hit by a car. You're just like, man, that's just terrible run of luck. Poor bastard. So there's that. You have Mickey still pulling at the Eli front of things, where he's trying to figure out if there's some connection between Eli and Trevor. So ultimately, he goes to see Eli, but Eli doesn't want to have anything to do with him because Jerry kind of screwed him over. I was like, well, I was about to say, well, Jerry did get murdered, but he's like, no, Jerry stuck me here, and obviously he got super pumped full of meds and wasn't even himself. So Mickey, at his daughter's soccer game, ends up talking to the lawyer that he was talking to the other day, who gave him, in the previous episode, who gave him information about Eli and such. And he tries to paint the picture of like, hey, we're talking about a vet here, like what happened to him. He got a little startled, and they were able to get the charges dropped down to basically firing a weapon or something like that. It'll be 3 years, but they could whittle it down to a year in prison and he'll be good. But obviously for Eli, it's like, that's still a year too long. I love that he got his other client who's mixed up in some embezzlement stuff. Because I love Mickey's like, wait, are you committing a crime right now while I'm representing you in court? Homedrew just turns his phone over and he's like, dude, you need to figure this stuff out, because if you don't, I am not going to represent you. You need to give them something tangible, because he's basically sold off all like the embezzlement he's done, because he bought a whole bunch of stuff, a coffee machine, a Rolex, but he's already sold that off to kind of pay off his debts and stuff. So it's like, yeah, they need something tangible or I'm just done working with you, because you could go serious hard time for what you're going down. And obviously he played a role at the convince that lawyer's like, hey, there's a vet over there. People who testified to stuff that Eli's kind of going through as a vet, and just what coming back has been a readjustment. And it's like, oh, were you a vet? And he was like, yeah, I actually was in the military. That's how I learned all my computer stuff. It's like, dishonorably discharged, weren't you? And the guy was like, yeah. And I was like, of course you were. So. But when Mickey was able to get Eli's charges kind of dropped down to a year, and all right, tell me what you know about this. Because at first Eli's like, are you suggesting I'm the one that killed like Laura and Jan? But he's like, no, I had nothing to do with that. I won't even know these people. It's like, right, you were arrested nearby. It can't just be a coincidence, right? You had to have known something. But Eli was like, no, I don't know these people. And now he's like, wait, is that why Jerry decided, like, if Jerry didn't think there was a connection between me and this Trevor case, he would have never taken me as a client? And Mickey tells him straight up no. And it's like, so this was a dead end that Mickey was looking into, but I guess Jerry already knew it was a dead end. That's probably why he stuck Eli where he was, because he's like, yeah, I've got to focus more on the Trevor thing. This can wait. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe he was kind of like leaving his client a little dead in the water until like he settled with the whole Trevor thing. Potentially there's still that magic bullet that his assistant was talking about. Once again, that still could be BS that kind of tugged him along. Or once again, I get the feeling like she knows more than she lets on, but we'll have to wait and see. But it's like, it sucks, because Eli's talked about why everything played out the way it did. It's like, hey, I got kicked out of by my wife. I got a couple beers. I started shooting some cans. He's like, it felt good just to squeeze the trigger. Before I even knew it, the lights start blaring, bloop, bloop, and that's the last thing I remember. And I think you could tell Mickey kind of connected with him in the regard of blacking out. I think, once again, there's probably chunks in the past year that Mickey doesn't remember when it comes to his drug use and getting kicked out by his... Like, the moment he heard, like, oh, I got kicked out by my wife, like, Mickey kind of leaned in a little more. So I'm like, okay, so Maggie must have kicked you out. But to be fair, he was still with... Probably, like, I wonder... Once again, this was the past year, so who knows if that was post him and Lorna. You'd assume so, because, I mean, we don't know, like, how long they were married, how long they were together, how long they were married. So, it seems like, at least the Maggie thing, at least that seems like it was a while ago. Lorna seems like that was a while ago, considering they're not... It doesn't seem like things are complicated on that front. It seems like they're super copacetic about their circumstances, so it seems like they've had time to potentially deal with it all as well, so... Mickey and Cisco did finally find the bug, but obviously in these situations, like, no, leave the bug. That way we can mislead whoever, because the moment we remove the bug, they know we found out about it. So let's leave it there, give them misinformation. Obviously, we just recently saw this on something else. Once again, Bosch Legacies, where that exact thing came up. Once again, another based on Michael Connelly novels, as I brought up at the beginning of the series, but... Some other interesting things, let's focus on the Trevor conversation, because Trevor kept ignoring Mickey's call, which I'm like, dude, you're going to trial soon? Why are you, like, your innocence is, like, on the line here, and even Mickey's like, why do you seem so calm about this? But it's like, he's like, oh, because I know I'm innocent, and I trust my lawyer, and it's like, I don't know. It feels like you should put a little more effort into this, because he was too busy, like, he's like, oh, this game, like, it's something me and Laura worked on. It meant a lot more to her than even did to me. So continuing down this route is more so about, like, keeping that torch alive for, like, she wanted this. It was something important to her. So it's not just about him. It's about her as well. But I'm also like, the way you're handling this, because also part of me wonders, I assumed the fact that he didn't pick up Mickey's call in the episode, I was like, oh, because you're being a little pissy because of, like, everything last episode, him taking you to the crime scene and make you, like, go through all that and kind of chewing you out like that. I figured you were kind of acting a little pissy towards that, which I think there's maybe a part of that into the equation. But I'm like, I don't know, it's your life. Like, you could go to prison for a very long time for life or whatever. So you would think you'd pick up when your lawyer calls. Once again, you're the one that lied about not knowing about the affair, and stuff. So I don't know. It's not like you've been the greatest client. And even Mickey talked about it with Izzy that, yeah, he's had clients like no one like Trevor before. And Izzy said, like, right, once you're kind of like with all those zeros involved, like, obviously life is a little different. So she knows about it just because, as we learned last episode, there was different, like, pop singers and stuff that she, like, did dance stuff for them, like, on tour and stuff. So she knows what it's like to live with those people in that high percentage range and stuff. That upper echelon of sorts. So another angle to this episode is everything with Maggie. I forgot to talk about it last episode, but they arrested Soto, the guy that she's like trying to take down for slave labor. And so ultimately her witness is backing down because detective was at Langford went too hard in the paint. They raided the place, but no one's willing to talk. And she's like, now my client is second guessing, and that's kind of on him. Once again, Mickey kind of gave her a heads up last episode, like, be careful around that Langford dude. He's, so ultimately she goes to try and talk to her witness and convince him to go through with, testifying against Soto. But he doesn't want to because he's like, right, I went to work, everyone was looking at me, so he's like, they must know it was me. And he's worried about retaliation, so, but, Maggie's like, we can relocate you, but it's like, no, understandable. It's like, right, this is my community, my family's here, my sister's here, like my church is here. So I don't think it's probably not even just the family connection. It's probably also like your neighbors and probably the community you've built around you. Like they kind of have that uprooted would just be, you know, especially for his kids. I think he even said like, at the time, like I wanted to do the right thing. Like you said, I couldn't sleep, but I think at the time he just probably was maybe thinking because of his daughter, he wanted to do the right thing, or maybe he didn't realize things would escalate to this point that Soto would be such a bad guy that it's like, man, my family could be in danger. I gotta think about my daughter. But Maggie convinced him to keep going. Well, later on he gets shot. They're like, oh, it seemed like it might have been a carjacking, but seems more likely a Soto coming after them. Which Haley did roll up on the crime scene, which I think that's she's like, oh, I was worried. I'm like, understandable. I guess it's like, right, this is because it's like the detective did say like, oh, your client, so now it's making her a little worried because it's like, oh man, like a client of mom's got killed, like what if this, you know, but still, like she shouldn't have crossed that tape to go look and see her client. But it's like she seems a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Desensitized a little bit to some extent. The way, like, before she was looking at some of the files, I think it was about Trevor's case. It was his wife and Jan, and it was like, well, I'm sorry, Haley, you shouldn't have seen that. But she's like, oh, I've seen kind of worse. Like, she kind of brought that up, and then she kind of, like, swayed away from it. So, it seems like she's kind of, like, looked more into this morbid stuff than she should be looking into it. So, maybe there's something there. She's also presented her a certain thing like, oh, it's glad to see you and Dad were there to see us win a game. Like, you were both there. You know, you guys were laughing on the sideline. So I think there's a part of her that's hoping that, like, I don't know if she wants them to, like, get back together or not, but I think for her, she's happy at the very least they're on good terms. But I think she's getting the inkling, like, she probably does want them back together. It's like, right, Dad's in a better place, and so she's probably pushing and probably hoping that her mom will forgive him, because I think she's forgave him, because I think maybe for her, the trust isn't broken like it is between Maggie and her, so I think she's probably a little more forgiving when it comes to her father's, like, drug use and past than maybe Maggie is, so, especially because she caught her mom and dad almost about to kiss when he's comforting her after everything that went down with her client and Haley seeing everything, and they're about to kiss, but it's like, oh, no, yeah, I should go. It's like, yeah, are you good? Yeah, glad. And she watched all that, so might incentivize her to kind of push a little bit more of like, right, I need to try a little harder. Not, I mean, on borderline parent trapping them to some extent, you know? So we'll see if that ends up being the case, or whether it's just kind of like, oh, whether I'm personally reading too much into that. Another interesting element to the episode is that we learned that Jesus, the case that that detective from last episode referenced, it turns out it was, like I said, he might have given more details about it last episode, I just didn't remember, but Mickey talked to Izzy about it, and it's like, right, it was an innocent man who went away for a murder that he didn't commit, and he's serving 15 years, and it would have been life, but Mickey got it down to, no, I don't think is he serving 15 years, or, yeah, I think he is currently serving 15 years, but it's like, it would have been life, because the witness they had lined up bailed at the last second, so maybe there's something more with that. And so Mickey ended up giving the guy the only option he had at the time, and was pleading. It was to take a plea deal, because if they went to trial without this witness, it probably would have he would have been probably dead to rights, and so it was less likely that they were going to win. So it would have been a situation of him going for life. And he's like, until that detective brought that up last episode, it's been sitting with him. So, because I'm pretty sure he's trying to say, like, Jesus is like, right, you committed this atrocity, and you're only getting 15 years is kind of the whole point. It's like, yeah, you got him off. Because he had the whole conversation with Maggie last episode. And until that detective brought it up, it's probably, it's one of those moments of, because the way Mickey put it is that last year, obviously, was everything with his drugs and stuff. So him, like, being an addict. So he ended up pushing that off even further. Like, I don't know if there was any correlation. Obviously, it was his accident. I don't know if this whole Jesus thing, guilt over how things played out then, played any role in that. But, once again, Izzy, correcting myself, Izzy was saying specifically not about, like, the thing that's making you take drugs, but it's like, you got to find out what was it, like, your reason basically to be sober, to keep being sober. I'm butchering that again, but I think it's kind of a combination of the two. Like, you know, trying to find that reason why you need to stay sober, be sober is kind of like, that's part of the work and stuff. But he did get Lorna to open up the file again, so a case from the past is rearing its head, and he's going to be trying to work on that, I think, over the course, while he's working on other clients of Jerry's while balancing this Trevor case, because it's like, yeah, they're going to court pretty soon, so we'll see how that all ends up turning out. But at the end of the episode, we did get Mickey going to, I think after his encounter with Maggie, it made him decide, like, all right, he was going to go to the meeting along with Izzy, because she was saying, because she figured him out, and it's like, oh, I get it, because he thinks, she's like, oh, you think just white knuckling it on your own for the rest of your life will be able to keep you sober? She's like, no, you need to talk to other people about, like, what you're kind of going through. That's the only way, like, to have an open space to talk about this stuff, you know, instead of, like, kind of bottling it up to yourself, because that's not going to help. But Izzy kind of talks it, like, oh, I see, you thought if you hired an addict to be your driver, I could basically keep you on a straight and narrow, but she's like, that's not going to work. And Mickey's about to say something, but he can't, because she's got him dead to rights in that regard. But he does show up at the end, introduce himself at the meeting, and I think that was a good first step for him. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm once again kind of worried, because I get the feeling and inkling, like, storytelling wise, it feels pertinent to make it so that Mickey does relapse, just from a storytelling purpose. It's that thing of, like, you hope he doesn't. Obviously, it was a little slippery last episode at the bar, but hopefully he doesn't. But I feel like storytelling wise, if not now, at some point in the future, it's going to happen. But we'll have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.